Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking time to review some information that I'll be presenting today that will provide a level setting experience so that we are all coming into the next board meeting on the same page, hopefully. And we can talk about some opportunities that Sweetwater is exploring. And what we will do is talk about just broad strokes, what's been happening through the watershed over the past 15 years to up until now, and where that puts Sweetwater. So as the watershed evolves, so does the organization. And so what we will be trying to accomplish today is to develop a consensus on why these opportunities are important, and if they're a good fit for the mission and vision of Sweetwater, and if so, what do we do about it? So just generally speaking, a question that I have is what is a watershed organization? When we have a geographic scope like Sweetwater, who are we serving? How are we doing that? Are we providing physical project recommendations? Are we doing only education activities? I think you understand what I'm trying to get at here is that when we have a scope like Sweetwater, when we have a geographic range like Sweetwater, it can be difficult to maintain focus on who we are as an organization from beginning to end. And so thinking about the watershed organization more than 15 years ago, what are some of the thoughts that come to mind? We have to note that TMDLs didn't exist, 9 element plants didn't exist, the Joyce work had not started, and it was very much the same watershed, but organizations weren't working together as well as they do now. At least that's my understanding of it. MS4 communities still had MS4 permits, but they weren't working together as much as they could. There definitely wasn't watershed-based permits. And so the idea of Sweetwater, to form it about 10 years ago, was to provide that opportunity to connect municipal communities to one another, help them learn from one another, support each other as they tried to make improvements within their own boundaries to prevent water pollution. And another major goal was to break down communication barriers and silos. And from my understanding, I think over the past 10 years, Sweetwater has been successful and played a part in breaking down communication barriers and silos. We have our Respect Our Waters program that over 20 municipalities contribute to, and we can have a watershed perspective by still providing services and activities. And so as we move forward as an organization, how do we ensure that we provide a holistic approach to the entire watershed, but still offer meaningful programs and engagement opportunities? And when we think about the transition of the watershed, I want to think about the permits as well, the transition of MS4 permits. And Ben will be able to speak to this much better than I can. But 15 years ago, in a permit requirement, it may have read something like provide stormwater education to residents. As time's progressed, and by design, the permits become more and more focused as an iterative process. Now the permit requirements read more like, what activities are you doing? Who are you focusing those efforts on? And what are you doing to follow up on that? And that's an important thing to note, in my opinion, as we move forward as a region, because the MS4 permits are by design, again, trying to reduce water quality pollution and impairments. So thinking about all of the organizations that exist, how many connection and this grand network of community working together to help promote more projects, to me, that sounds great, but it's just wildly complex, and I don't even know where to start. If our goal is to provide a watershed perspective, again, what does that mean, and where do we start, or where do we continue to do that work that provides that perspective? And to me, I believe through the MS4 permits, there is an opportunity to, again, provide a holistic approach for the entire watershed, not just the lower reaches, but the entire watershed, and still provide purposeful and meaningful programs that improve water quality and have a direct improvement in the basin. And so the thing I mean to say by that is that Sweetwater can provide a watershed perspective, but manage programs that have very specific deliverables. And I'll just continue to move forward here. I want to keep this under 10 minutes. And so the best way to move forward, I think, would be to look at an example. So if we want to provide a watershed perspective, but still have really meaningful work, what does that mean? And so when we look at one municipality, we can begin to understand what's happening in that community, and then catalog it and organize those findings in a way that are consistent with MS4 permit requirements. So River Edge is doing stormwater education activities and events, and sometimes we partner with them on that, and a lot of times they're doing it on their own, which is great and phenomenal. But does the MS4 know about that? Are they able to capture that information in their annual reports? If they don't contribute to that activity, they can't put it in their annual MS4 reports. So Sweetwater could help act as a bridge between these types of activities and work with and on behalf of the MS4 communities to incorporate those activities into their annual MS4 report. I hope that makes sense. So if a municipality says, hey, come check out River Edge's program, and they're actively supporting that program or activity, they should, there's some caveats there, be able to put that in their report and track that information. And so Sweetwater would help track those opportunities, and again, organize it in a way so that we can understand what is happening, but we can also understand what isn't happening. And then Sweetwater can provide recommendations to fill those gaps. And I'll continue to move forward here. And again, focusing on where the municipalities have shown interest. And so we have engaged with the municipalities, and there is an interest in the education, the involvement, and then the pollution prevention service arena. So I'm gonna move again real quickly here. So the Respect Our Waters program as it exists right now is mostly passive. We put on TV commercials. When we were able to, we would attend community events. But it was, again, to the more residential general audience. But as these permits evolve, they're requiring more targeted engagement. And I'm gonna go ahead and move forward here and show you what I mean by that. Don't get caught up in the details on this, especially the personnel. I add up all the personnel requirements for the programs that we're proposing and put them at the end. But right now we do education with TV, social media, attending community events, more randomly and not in a real structured process. So that needs to be improved. But right now we do general education to general resident audiences, and that is required. But again, municipalities are required to take a more active approach in that and physically engage with target audiences such as golf courses, car washes, restaurants. And right now, I don't know of many MS4s that are able to do that. And so Sweetwater could help fill that role by developing a plan to go start knocking on doors, when it's safe to do so, and raising awareness and being able to capture those metrics and put it in a form so that they can put it in an annual MS4 report. Moving forward again very quickly, applying that same idea to the public involvement program. Right now we have the Adopt Your Drain program that allows people to adopt drains, but there's other activities out there too. And so what are they? Can we help make that connection for the municipalities on their behalf? And this next one is it's a newer idea. We've been working with UWM, and we'll work with all partners through all of these potential programs, but we've been working with UWM, who's completed a project to develop an app so that interns and volunteers can go and report what they're finding in the field directly in an app. It's reported into a cloud. That cloud can then generate a report that the municipalities can put in their annual MS4 report. And we'll talk more about this in detail at the meeting. But if we do want to go down this route of more MS4 services, we're looking at to start with, a minimum of 2.5 staff, an AmeriCorps individual, and then multiple intern positions. So just to give you an idea, in 2020, we did have 6 internship opportunities. So this isn't, might seem like a lot to manage, but we're already doing it. And now that the Joyce work is done, the 9 key element plan work is essentially complete, we do have the capacity to focus our efforts. And I really like that idea of focusing our efforts and still providing a watershed perspective. I'm going to go past this next slide because we'll talk about this in more detail. But again, Sweetwater doesn't have to provide every education opportunity within those communities. It's just being more deliberate about how we connect MS4 communities to activities already happening in their community. And in my mind, using the MS4 work as a stepping stone to meeting some of our larger goals, it does make sense to me, and we'll talk about this in more detail. But when we focus the initial efforts on MS4 compliance, I think through those activities and organizing and cataloging programs that are already happening in communities, I think that does have ability to set us up to implement 9 key element plans, or at least make recommendations. And that work is being done through the playbook. And I'm not going to go much more into detail on this, but I do want to note that we won't just focus on MS4s. I think by having a strong grounding in that work, it allows us to do some of the work that we've already been working on, the 9 key element plans. It allows us to help implement those plans in the future. And by implementing those 9 key element plans, we hope to meet TMBL goals. But again, this is down the road, and we have a lot of opportunity here. But again, it's generating out of this MS4 service idea here. So again, we'll talk about this in much more detail during the board meeting. I hope that this was making sense for you. I'm really excited to have a more generative discussion. So thank you.